Okay, well, we are rolling now, so welcome to Grumpy Science with Bob and Mark.
Okay, we were going to talk about what we were going to talk about, but we're already started, so you know, what the hell. Oh, can I say that on television? Anyway.
Well, on the radio, you got to be careful what you say.
Anyway, I'm Mark, this is Bob, and we're at your favorite Grumpy Science studio. Obviously, it's your favorite one because
both of you seem to be watching all of our videos.
Now, we did get one dislike. Somebody didn't like us.
Oh, we got a hater.
Yeah.
And it's weird because it was not on a controversial topic, right?
Well, actually, it was on accuracy and precision.
Which is extremely well established scientifically. I didn't think there was any two opinions on this.
Well, actually,
right?
if you had just gone out and bought the very best iPad or mobile device you could and said, I'm going to go measure people on the football field after they get hit in the head.
With my new app.
Yeah, with my new app, which has a latency of 600 milliseconds. And
yeah, latency means there's like a random delay in there that could be nothing. It could be 500 milliseconds. It could be whatever. It's just random noise added on because of the operating system and the everything else that's related to the hardware of the interface. That makes it look smooth and wonderful to you, but it makes it a terrible scientific device.
Yeah.
These are just facts.
Yeah.
And these are published scientifically.
Now, maybe you didn't like it because it was a 20-minute video. And,
yeah.
I guess
if
you got it. If you don't like it, just quit watching.
Yeah, that's right, man. Fast forward, there's tons of stuff on grumpy cats, and frankly, that stuff's a lot more hilarious than us and probably more accurate. But it was interesting to me because we do get haters for this kind of stuff. You know, people giving us, and they're always like, you know, in the murky, you know, land of anonymity and the internet. Right here, we are raw exposure. We're real people with real names and everything, real scientific credentials. But let's sort of recap it, right?
Yeah.
And these are just facts, and it is my scientific opinion that these facts are correct, and you don't have to believe them, right?
Yep.
It's just the way it is. But we're just going to give you the unvarnished scientific truth, and that is that hardware that you buy that's commodity grade. That means if you go to Best Buy or someplace like that, I don't know if I can say the name, but you go to the store, or you go to one of these online outlets and you buy a mouse or you buy a keyboard or you buy a touchpad or whatever, those things are terrible devices for measuring brain function.
Now, keep in mind, they're very good for what they are designed
They're designed to interface a person with a computer screen and to do it, you know, flawlessly and have the appearance of being smooth. But because they're giving you this veneer, this appearance, all the stuff going on in the background becomes less and less time constrained, and in order to get a good measurement on your brain, you have to have very tight sub-millisecond time constraints, and you just can't get that. Just anything with an operating system that uses that operating system to compute delays is going to be off by, what is it, 15 to 20, 30
It
milliseconds.
can be off. The variability of those things as we measure are anywhere from 50 to 300, 370 milliseconds.
Right.
So, you know, it can be pretty bad.
So these things,
again, we're not slamming all these computers because actually
they're great for what they do.
We're using
right.
them.
But you got to use, this is all about using the right tool for the job. So if you want something that's entertaining, like Grumpy Science, right? This is entertainment.
We hope it's entertaining.
This isn't prescription. But you know, we try to make it entertaining, what we think is funny and irritating about science. But, you know, you got to use the right tool for the job, right? If you want more details, we're going to actually have different channels where we talk about stuff in more detail. But let's get back to the hardware of measuring brain function. There are papers that are published as recently as like within the last year or two that say, you know, as computer stuff gets faster and faster, we're still recapping, the actual measurements that it makes on human performance get worse and worse because these commodity grade interfaces are really focused on making the look and feel, the smoothness of your interaction with the computer better, but it's not optimized as a measuring tool. Now let me give you an example. Okay, you can make an application for a mobile device that appears to do anything. In fact, I have one right here. This is totally unscripted. Mark has no idea that I'm doing this, but I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to pull up my hammer app. Here it is. So I want to hammer something in. I've got an app. It's a hammer. Does that mean that I can take a nail and start hammering nails into boards? No, that's an inappropriate use of the hardware. This hardware is not optimized for driving nails. It doesn't matter if there's 50 different hammer apps, okay? The fact of the matter is you use a hammer. So anybody who's been born since 1990, you may not be aware of this, but you can't do everything with an iPhone. You can't do everything with a mobile app. And the same thing is true scientifically. If you want to measure brain function, you have to have hardware that's really specifically optimized to make that measure. And it's very easy to make it look cool and sexy and all kinds of cool interface stuff using mobile, devices, but the measurements themselves are not accurate. And that is just a scientific fact. And you can hate it all you want.
Yeah. But, the recap was on accuracy and precision. Specifically, we were talking about reaction time. And we're actually writing a few reaction time papers right now, which gives you the opportunity to go back and read all the old stuff and look at things like what affects reaction time. And, we might have alluded to this. Is even more recap. We might have talked about this before, but
we're forgetting, because don't forget, we're drinking beers while we're doing this, right?
So you're
going to hear the same things over and over.
Read a 2010 paper talking about how caffeine improves reaction time, and they didn't cite a whole lot of papers before 2000. I found a 1934 paper that showed that caffeine improved reaction time.
A lot of people think science started around 2007 or something, and it didn't. And Mark and I have talked about this a lot. There's a lot of really great science that was done 100 years ago.
Yeah.
With really what we would think of as primitive instruments, but they were built by the people doing the research. They're calibrated carefully, and many of them are much better measures than you can get today.
Yeah, well, that sort of segues into other advantages of looking at old papers, is that they do stuff that we really we're not always allowed to do anymore. Like one of my favorite ones was another reaction time paper. This was done in 1965, so full disclosure, I think I was 7 years old then, so I had nothing to do with it, so don't blame me.
I was 2, but I did invent something really important when I was 4 in 1967. I did say I thought it'd be awesome if people would go in rockets to the moon, and 2 years later, they copied me. 2 guys on the moon. I still haven't gotten credit for it. So you can do things when you're young, but I was 2. I was a little too young to really contribute to that literature.
Yeah, I didn't contribute to this, but the 1965 paper looked at, what I'm going to tell you, I read it and I looked at it. It's like, oh my gosh, this must have been the inspiration for the opening scene of Ghostbusters.
Mm-hmm.
Because
movie.
In this paper, it showed that there is negative reinforcement works, in that you shock somebody whenever they have a slow reaction time, and it improves their reaction time.
For those of you who haven't seen the movie recently, right, it's Bill Murray given some psychophysical test, an ESP test to 2 students in college. An ESP test. And they'd have to guess what was on a card. If they guessed wrong, you'd give them a shock. So there it is. So that's one of his favorite scenes, because there's a huge body of research that more or less was sort of like that.
Yeah, there was. 50s and 60s era. A lot of LSD experiments and a lot of other things.
Hey, that's wrong. Negative reinforcement stuff, right?
Yeah, and then some other reaction time papers that work. We probably talked about this, but different things. Improve your reaction time. Dark chocolate, walnuts, exercise, acute exercise, long-term exercise. The other interesting thing, being sedentary. We actually talked about that too. Being sedentary makes you worse.
Yeah, at almost everything, except for being sedentary.
Yeah, but you're pretty good at that. And the other thing was that the other thing that was interesting, which sort of plugs into our accuracy and precision rule, is that reaction times have gotten about 20% slower between mid 1800s and present day. 1870. Now that could have something to do with the way people are doing reaction time tests, and they're less accurate and they introduce more latencies, or maybe more sedentary lifestyles leads to that.
Maybe we're testing a larger population of older people. Maybe that does matter. Maybe that doesn't. Right?
But the only thing to really do is really talk about basically you need to do your own reaction time test and see what affects it. And that's most people walk around think, hey,
So here's a recap that Mark and I were talking about, human subject studies. Well, if you're interested in a total population of 1, that's you, right? Then the statistics becomes very easy. So a lot of times science is trying to describe the reaction or the behavior of a very large population by taking a sample. But if the whole population you're interested in is your reaction, then you can run a study and you can see what works and what doesn't, as long as you can measure the effect, right?
Yep.
That's kind of our point.
Yeah.
So you kind of just jump across all this sort of like, well, 37% chance that this is going to help you. You can actually determine with great confidence whether or not something's going to have an effect on you if you try it and you measure the effect.
And maybe it has an effect, or maybe you think it has an effect. There's actually another publication that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I know
where this is headed.
People who smoke a lot of marijuana think that they're faster
and more creative.
And they actually are. This is actually published, so I thought it was pretty interesting. Their reaction times are actually, interestingly enough, 20% slower, but they thought they would be just as fast as controls.
So something's affecting the perception somehow in your mind of how you're performing. It may give you the perception that you're doing better when you're doing worse. We talked about this too with one of my favorite papers from way back about people dropping acid and thinking they were a lot more creative.
Right.
And they actually showed pictures of before and after, and even a child could say, Daddy, what's wrong with that one?
You talk about Bob's buddy who thought he could lift weights better when he was
the drunker he got, the stronger he felt, but the weaker he was, because alcohol affects not just your perceptions, but it affects your motor control. And lifting heavy weights is a complex motor control task.
Right, and it's really the boiling frog effect. You put a
you
frog,
don't feel it happening to you.
You put a frog in a pot of cold water and it stays there, and you slowly turn up the heat. Now, I've never done this, but this is what I hear, is that the frog doesn't jump out because it doesn't realize he's boiling.
It doesn't sense the change, right? So when you start to do things to yourself that are like behavioral, like exercising when you weren't, or changing your exercise, changing your diet, changing your supplements, doing different things, and you're expecting long-term effects, it's actually really hard to say, well, how do I feel now precisely compared to how I felt 2 months ago or 3 months ago? Yeah. That's hard enough to do, but it's virtually impossible when it comes to brain function. We're just helping you get past that with a device that's consistent, reliable, measure brain function. You can compare yourself today with yourself 2, 3, 4 years ago, and you actually have numbers to compare.
Yeah, and everybody has that weakness of misperception of themselves. Because, for example, full disclosure, I swam competitively for the better part of half a century. So that makes me sound really old. But then
really competitive.
But,
But no, Mark actually is a really seriously good swimmer. And
last few years, I got kind of busy, I think, doing things like trying to push the brain gauge across the finish line.
Drinking beers.
That had a lot to do with pushing the brain gauge across the finish line. But, getting busy with other things, and I just said, I'm still in shape, and I could do anything I want. I could still go out and run 3 miles if I needed to, or whatever, because I'm still semi-active, and keep believing that stuff.
I have no illusions.
Yeah.
But I just happen to know. But Mark's point is...
my point is, a few weeks ago, I decided, well, maybe I really should really measure myself. I'm going to go out and see how fast I can run. And, dude, I did not measure myself with a stopwatch. I was out running in the country, and basically first time I ran, there were 5 buzzards circling around.
Yeah, so now he's not timing himself on a run. He's counting the number of vultures that are circling overhead.
Now, I will say, after a couple of weeks, I was down to one buzzard.
One last hopeful, persistent buzzard.
So the last couple of days, I ran in the dark. So I feel like I'm going faster, even though I might not be.
That's funny. So on the buzzard scale of fitness, Mark is actually getting better.
I'm doing better.
So they're not sensing that you're clutching to life.
That's right. I won't let them have it.
That's right. Oh my God. Well, that's really funny. But basically, we just wanted to do a quick recap. We wanted to give a shout out to the haters. Go ahead.
Yeah,
and hate.
Maybe he hated us because it was 20 minutes, and actually we got a shout out from somebody saying, "Hey, don't worry about that 15-minute time constraint."
We're going to talk about that
approaching.
More. And,
exactly. But a short recap. We're going to hold it to the 15-minute line.
We'll do that, and you can either go, stay on this channel, this YouTube channel, or other ones that we'll tell you about to get a lot more in-depth information. It'll be a lot more science-y and a lot less entertaining. But anyway, I think that's it.
That's all.
Thanks for joining us.